It was supposed to be a quick 30-minute round trip, but 18 years later, no one knows where he went. On the night of September 12th, 2003, Little Creek Base, hidden deep in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, was settling into a quiet evening. Sergeant Darius Ellis, 28, a logistics specialist from Detroit, had been assigned to deliver a shipment of military supplies to a transfer point less than 15 miles away, a trip that should have taken just half an hour. He texted his mother right before leaving the base, promising he'd be home that weekend. But the next morning, guards found his delivery truck burned out along a remote trail, 6 miles in the opposite direction of his planned route. There was no body, no signs of a struggle, only Darius' name tag, bent and lying on the cold, dry ground. 18 years passed, and the search quietly faded into obscurity. Until one day, a group of campers stumbled upon a military backpack covered in decaying leaves, deep in a treacherous mountain crevice. Inside were a blood-stained piece of uniform, Darius' identification papers, and his folding knife. Who made him disappear, and why hide it for all these years? Sergeant Darius Lamont Ellis was born in 1975 and grew up in the West Side neighborhood of Detroit, Michigan, a place where pothole-riddled streets and the constant threat of gang violence loomed large. But Darius was different from many boys around him. He had his mother, Ms. Valerie Ellis, a night shift nurse willing to work double shifts so her son could stay in school. In his mother's eyes, Darius was always a gentle, hard-working, and loving child. Even when he had to stay home alone late at night, he would dutifully finish his homework and have coffee ready for her when she came home. Valerie had lost her husband when Darius was just 3. That loss forced mother and son to lean on each other to survive, creating a small, close-knit family filled with love in the chaos of the city. Growing up, Darius saw friends get pulled into drugs and gun violence, but he held tight to his belief, "Mom gave me everything. I can't let her down." At 18, Darius decided to enlist not only to escape the vicious cycle of crime in his neighborhood, but also so he could send money home to help his mother. He was accepted into the U.S. Army's Logistics Corps thanks to his meticulous nature and outstanding organizational skills. Fellow soldiers at the barracks used to joke, "If Darius runs the supply room, you could find a toothpick still in its original wrapper from 10 years ago." Darius wasn't just good at his job, he often helped younger recruits, encouraging those who were close to quitting during grueling training. He quickly became well-liked among his peers and earned the trust of his superiors, who assigned him important transport missions. Every weekend, Darius would set aside time to call his mother, sharing stories of life on base and promising that once his service ended, he'd bring her to live somewhere peaceful. Valerie Ellis treasured the warmth of her son's laughter through the old landline phone, which had become her only lifeline to him in a faraway place. On September 12th, 2003, right before Darius left the supply depot, he sent his mother a text, "Just tonight. Mom, we'll be home this weekend. Please remember to eat well." Valerie smiled through tears, never imagining it would be his last message. Little Creek Base sat nestled among the towering stone peaks of the San Juan Mountains in Colorado. Originally built during the Cold War as a supply hub for training operations across the western U.S., by 2003 it remained a small outpost, hosting only about 150 active personnel, mostly logistics and maintenance troops. Little Creek was so quiet that at night, the wind would whistle through the mountain passes with eerie, distant howls, giving new recruits chills during night shifts. The surrounding terrain was especially treacherous. Winding dirt roads prone to landslides snaked through the deep, narrow canyons of the San Juans, with only locals knowing the safe routes. About 12 miles from the base lay the town of Silver Pine, home to just over 2,000 residents. Silver Pine sat tucked among pine forests and rocky ridges, blanketed by snow in winter and scorched by dry, dusty heat in summer. Most locals were retired miners or families who had moved there seeking a quiet life far from the city. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, yet people were quick to keep silent about things they didn't want to get involved in. Relations between the townspeople and the military base were friendly on the surface, but there was always an unspoken boundary. Soldiers would often unwind at Silver's Tap, the town's only bar, but they knew better than to cause trouble or risk. being shunned by the entire town. On the day Darius disappeared, word spread through Silver Pine within hours. Fear set in quickly, as getting lost in the mountains wasn't unheard of, but a soldier vanishing so close to the base was unthinkable. On the morning of September 13th, townsfolk gathered along the mountain trail, staring at the charred skeleton of the army truck and whispering prayers for the black soldier who had become part of their small community. But after weeks of fruitless searching, no one spoke Darius Ellis' name again. Silver Pine slipped back into its quiet routine, while only his mother kept calling old army contacts, searching for news of her son year after year. In the early days of the investigation, army detectives and county deputies interviewed over 20 people, including night shift soldiers at the base and residents of Silver Pine. A gate guard remembered clearly Darius left the gate at 10:17 p.m. He waved goodbye, looked completely normal. The gate camera then caught his headlights turning north, matching the route toward the supply station. But just 10 minutes later, the traffic camera at the town's main intersection showed no vehicles passing through, proving Darius never reached the main road. So where did he turn off? A milk delivery driver's statement only deepened the mystery. Around 10:30 p.m., I drove past a sharp bend near Red Mine Hill and saw an army truck parked strangely by the roadside, headlights off. I thought the driver was resting and didn't dare approach. The most suspicious clue was Darius' name tag, a personal item he always wore on his chest, found near the burned truck, bent as if someone had deliberately twisted it, yet there was no blood, drag marks, or any signs of a struggle at the scene. Investigators found no suspicious footprints either, partly because loose rocks and a light rain that night had disturbed the ground. From the start, rumors swirled through the barracks Darius deserted. He ran off because of debts, or worse, someone took him because he saw something he shouldn't have. But no one had proof, and Valerie Ellis insisted. My son would never run away. He loved the army, loved his community, loved his family. On the night of September 12th, 2003, Little Creek Base was shrouded in a heavy, unsettling silence. A faint crescent moon hung above the mountains, casting weak light that couldn't pierce the winding dirt roads leading out of the base. Sergeant Darius Ellis left the supply depot at 10:00 p.m., carrying his delivery paperwork and the keys to a 2.5-ton army truck. He stopped at the guard post, signed the log, and greeted the familiar gate guard without any sign of distress. Everything was captured on security cameras, confirming he left the base by the book. The last recorded sighting of his army truck was on the gate camera, its red taillights fading into the darkness. According to schedule, Darius was supposed to drive 15 miles north to deliver supplies to a forward logistics point at North Ridge. This route was a routine nightly path used by army vehicles, not particularly dangerous except for the risk of mountain bears or rocks sliding onto the road after rain. Estimated travel time 30 minutes round trip. But that night, Darius never radioed in. When 00 a.m. came, and the supply station reported they hadn't received the shipment, Base Control issued an immediate search alert. A patrol team was dispatched to comb the standard route. Temperatures dropped sharply, and dense fog began rolling over the twisting mountain slopes, making the search even more challenging. Around 4:00 a.m., Darius's truck was found on a mountain trail 6 miles from the base in the opposite direction of his planned route. The fire had long burned out, leaving the cab and cargo area almost completely destroyed. There was no body in the vehicle, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Only Darius's name tag lay in the muddy ground next to deep tire ruts left in the wet earth after an early autumn rain. This was the beginning of the unanswered questions. Where did Darius go? Did he leave the truck on his own, or was he forced? And why did the truck end up burning in a place unrelated to his destination? The burn site was quickly sealed off before dawn. Ambulance lights, police cruisers, and flashlights illuminated the foggy forest, throwing shifting shadows over the rocky terrain. Army investigators, county deputies, and firefighters were all present. Preliminary reports confirmed the fire was no accident. Flames had started in the truck's cab, then spread rapidly to the cargo hold. Evidence showed accelerant had been poured from the cab's floor down to the ground, then ignited clear proof someone deliberately set the fire to destroy evidence. But the damp night air kept the blaze from consuming the entire vehicle, leaving some structural elements intact. Investigators scoured a 100-meter radius around the scene but found no blood, no fresh footprints, and no personal items beyond Darius's name tag. This raised alarming possibilities. Either whoever did this knew exactly how to cover their tracks, or Darius himself had staged everything. Still, the idea that Darius, a soldier nearing discharge who loved his family, would orchestrate his own disappearance by destroying Army property never convinced his mother or several seasoned investigators. A deeply unsettling clue came from the traffic camera near the town's main intersection, around 10:40 p.m., 20 minutes after Darius left the base. The camera recorded no vehicles heading toward North Ridge, confirming he never entered the main road. But how did he vanish just a few miles beyond the base gates in the darkness? A little-known trail veering into the San Juan Canyon might have given an opportunity for an ambush, or perhaps Darius was somehow lured onto that deadly path. On the morning of September 13th, the largest search operation in Little Creek's history began. More than 60 soldiers, rescue personnel, and even volunteers from Silver Pine split into 8 teams to comb a 15-mile radius around the burned truck. Helicopters scanned the area from above, and search dogs tried to track any lingering scent, but thick cloud cover and occasional drizzling rain hampered aerial searches. The deeper they looked, the more confounding it became. Every clue ended at the scorched truck. There were no signs leading anywhere else. For 2 weeks, teams searched every ravine, small cave, and dry creek bed. They found American badgers, deer tracks, but no trace of Darius. Rumors swirled. Some claimed he deserted. Others insisted he'd been killed over something shady on base. Each passing day drained Valerie Ellis' hope. She came to the burn site every morning, carrying a cup of her son's favorite coffee, standing among the misty canyons, whispering, "Darius, where are you by the 3rd week?" The critical golden hours for finding a missing person had slipped away, and the search teams had to withdraw. The case was officially reclassified as a cold case. The Army extended their condolences, but without a body. Darius remained listed only as missing, not deceased. Valerie refused to sign any paperwork declaring her son dead. 18 years passed. The file on Darius Ellis sat untouched in a cold metal drawer in the base records room, occasionally reopened by new staff or interns in the town of Silver Pine. The story of the missing black soldier became a campfire legend told at the local bar, growing more sensational with each retelling. Valerie, however, never stopped knocking on military office doors or writing letters to Colorado lawmakers, only to receive the same cold response: "We did everything we could." In the summer of 2021, a group of young campers strayed off the main hiking trail and accidentally entered the rugged San Juan Canyon as they searched for their way out. They stumbled upon a backpack half buried in damp earth, covered in decaying leaves. The military ID number on the pack was still visible. It belonged to Darius. Inside were a blood-stained piece of Army uniform, ruined ID papers, and a rusted folding knife. Forensic analysis confirmed the blood's DNA matched Darius's military record with 99.9% certainty. The case was immediately reopened. Valerie nearly fainted when she heard after 18 long years. The first tangible trace of her son had finally surfaced. Yet the renewed hope came with fresh terror. Who left the backpack there? And could Darius still be alive as soon as the backpack was discovered? The Military Investigation Office and the County Sheriff's Department reopened the case. Young investigators, who had only heard of Darius as a legendary missing soldier, now found themselves holding the very artifacts that bore silent witness to something that had happened 18 years ago. They flipped through thick case files filled with hundreds of pages of testimonies, maps, and crime scene photos. Each yellowed sheet seemed to whisper a reminder of past failure, a disappearance no one had ever been able to explain. But now, with the backpack, the long cold case was starting to heat up again. In the first meeting, Lieutenant Michael Monroe, the officer assigned to lead the new investigation, admitted, "We have to face the painful truth. There's a real possibility this soldier was killed the night he disappeared." Old fears quickly resurfaced in the Silver Pine community. Local media revived the story, recounting details of the burned truck and the bent name tag. Some longtime residents, now elderly, recalled strange noises they'd heard that night, an engine echoing through the canyon, the sharp clash of metal, then an eerie silence. But out of fear of getting involved, they'd kept quiet. Samuel, an elderly mechanic, remembered. I was closing up shop when I heard a truck speeding towards the canyon. The engine was roaring like it was being pushed to the limit. Then it cut off completely. I still regret not calling the police. What once seemed like scattered fragments of rumor were now fitting together. Darius might have been lured or forced into the canyon right after leaving the base. As they re-examined the old files, one name stood out: Lieutenant Bradley Hayes, Darius's direct commanding officer and the man who led the initial search the night Darius vanished. Back then, Bradley was an ambitious young officer, known for being strict, but few knew he was deeply in debt from gambling losses. Confidential financial documents revealed that 2 months before Darius disappeared, Bradley had taken a high-interest loan of $25,000 from a loan shark in Denver, promising to repay within 6 months, but with no realistic way to do so. Investigator Monroe began to suspect Bradley's possible involvement in illicit dealings with Army supplies. If Darius stumbled upon this, he would have become a threat that needed to be eliminated. Another clue strengthened this theory. Delivery records from that night showed several high-value items, like thermal imaging devices, were missing right before Darius took the shipment. Earlier investigators had dismissed this as a clerical error, but in light of Bradley's debts, it became a crucial lead. Monroe decided to confront Bradley, now retired and living 40 miles from Silver Pine for the first time in nearly 2 decades. An investigator knocked on Bradley's door with questions that cut deep. Did you really search for Darius that night, or were you trying to mislead everyone? Bradley Hayes' cabin sat quietly at the foot of a pine-covered hill, warm light spilling from the window, now in his 50s, his hair streaked with gray. Bradley greeted Monroe with outward calm, though his eyes betrayed tension when he heard Darius Ellis' name. Monroe got straight to the point. We've just recovered Darius' backpack in the canyon, and evidence suggests you didn't carry out your search as you claimed. Bradley's hand trembled slightly on his coffee mug, but he quickly composed himself. I did everything I could. It was dark, dangerous terrain, and my team almost went over a cliff. Darius disappearing wasn't my fault. But when Monroe pressed him about why the burned truck was found in the opposite direction of the planned route, Bradley fell silent, staring at the wooden floor. His voice dropped, I don't know, when Monroe confronted him with records of his debt and the missing supplies. Bradley abruptly stood, turned away, and muttered, I was afraid of getting killed that night too. There were people far more dangerous than me. His statement hinted that a larger force was involved, something beyond Bradley alone. Before leaving, Monroe handed him a card and firmly said, if you remember anything, call me immediately. Things are different now. The truth can't stay buried forever. The next day, armed with a legal search warrant, deputies searched Bradley's cabin in the old garage, thick with the smell of oil. They found an old combination safe. After hours of work opening it, inside were documents and maps of the San Juan area, including one marked with red ink, circling the very canyon where Darius's backpack had been discovered. This suggested Bradley had known the location for years, but kept it hidden. Investigators also uncovered a half-used notebook. Its final page contained just 3 ominous words: they know everything. Most chilling of all, they found a tightly coiled length of specialized climbing rope, matching the type of fibers found on a piece of cord discovered near the backpack site. These discoveries convinced Monroe that Darius' disappearance had never been an accident or a case of desertion. Someone, or multiple people, had worked to cover up the truth for nearly 2 decades. When word of the map's discovery spread, Darius' mother, Valerie, collapsed and was hospitalized for heart complications in a haze of consciousness. She whispered over and over, Darius, I'm finally close to finding you. When the evidence found at Bradley's house was brought back to the investigation office, Lieutenant Monroe and his task force decided to comb through the old records of Darius's case more thoroughly. They uncovered a detail that had been overlooked in the original reports: the testimony of a young soldier named Reggie Lewis.
who was only 20 at the time. He stated that around 10:45 p.m., he saw two vehicles driving side by side toward the canyon. However, the previous investigators had dismissed his account as unreliable. After the incident, Reggie left the Army due to PTSD and now lives in a trailer nearly 60 miles from Silver Pine. Monroe wasted no time tracking him down. Reggie had aged significantly. His hair thin and eyes haunted when he heard Darius's name. He insisted, "I know what I saw." There were two vehicles. One was the Army truck, and the other was a black SUV with no military plates. The SUV was forcing the truck to turn, almost like it was pushing it off course.
I even saw someone in uniform gripping the steering wheel, trying to keep control. I wanted to report it, but Lieutenant Bradley told me to stay quiet, said I was imagining things. This testimony perfectly matched suspicions that Darius had been coerced off his route and confirmed Bradley had intervened to suppress the truth, with assistance from the FBI. Monroe traced the SUV to a Texas-registered transport company, which had been used as a front for small arms smuggling across the Mexican border. Secret reports from 2003 indicated Little Creek Base was once suspected of having personnel collaborating with this network to funnel weapons out of the Army's inventory, but no evidence had ever been strong enough to bring charges. Darius' disappearance conveniently solved the risk of exposure, and the case quickly faded into obscurity. An anonymous former employee of the transport company revealed, "We used to do deals near Silver Pine. Nobody would expect it there. But one night, a soldier showed up at the wrong time. They told me to shut up, thanks to the SUV lead." The investigators pieced together a chilling theory Darius had stumbled upon an illegal weapons exchange while driving through a rarely used forest road. The smugglers decided to take care of it on the spot. Ensuring no one could investigate further, Bradley, drowning in debt, chose to help cover it up rather than report it, leading the search team into irrelevant areas and wasting precious time. This would explain why no evidence had ever surfaced beyond the burned truck. Monroe and his team organized a new search around the canyon where the backpack was found, this time bringing in geological experts and search dogs. While excavating near the spot where the backpack was buried, they unearthed something disturbing, a gray restraint cord, the kind used in military training, still knotted into a wrist loop. Although partially decomposed, it tested positive for Darius' skin cells, undeniable proof that he had been forcibly restrained there, not lost or fleeing. But the most devastating discovery came when the team found a small, torn cloth pouch wedged at the canyon's rocky edge. Inside were several rotted scraps of paper, just intact enough to recover a heartbreaking message. "Mom, I've been taken. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. I love you." When the forensics expert read the words aloud, it left many in the room in tears. Valerie, Darius' mother, was hospitalized again with heart failure upon hearing it, but in a brief moment of clarity. She whispered, "I knew my son never left me." Meanwhile, news of the new evidence leaked to the press, spreading rapidly across the state. Silver Pine was stunned. Many who once believed Darius had deserted now felt deep remorse. Veterans who had served alongside him volunteered to help with the renewed search, putting up a large sign at the canyon entrance, "Bring Darius home." A local TV reporter asked Monroe during an interview, "Do you believe Darius could still be alive?" Monroe paused, his eyes unwavering. Even the smallest hope is worth fighting for. That hope became a lifeline for Valerie as she lay in her hospital bed, holding a photo of her son. She murmured, "Darius, if you're still out there, I won't stop searching." A nurse recorded her words, which soon spread across social media, turning the case into a national story. Crowds began flocking to Silver Pine, leaving candles, flowers, and handwritten letters at the canyon gate. At night, hundreds of candles glowed softly against the dark mountains, each flicker carrying the silent prayers of strangers who longed for Darius to come home. As the search effort entered its third day, hundreds of people converged on the San Juan Canyon, not only to pray, but to dig and comb the rugged terrain for any trace of Darius. They included Silver Pine locals, veterans from neighboring states, old classmates of Darius, and even strangers moved by the story of a black soldier forgotten for 18 years. Meanwhile, the deeper investigators dug. The more complex the case became, they found no body, no new DNA beyond Darius' blood. But they did discover small pieces of modern trash fast food wrappers with expiration dates just 2 months before the backpack was found. This raised a chilling question. Someone had returned to the scene recently. This person could be someone trying to hide Darius' remains, or the very individual who orchestrated his disappearance. Monroe, now an unlikely hero in the eyes of Silverpine, began to feel the weight of his role. The media pressed relentlessly. Are you certain Darius is dead? Is someone trying to sabotage the investigation? Public faith, which had surged after the backpack discovery, started to waver. Doubts spread if this was a staged case. Who was pulling the strings in the tense atmosphere? One evening, Monroe received an unmarked envelope at his home. Inside was a scrap of paper, scrawled in crude handwriting, "Stop or you'll disappear like the black soldier." The words dripped with both racial hatred and deadly menace. Monroe and his family were immediately moved to a safe location, yet he refused to quit. In a closed meeting with his team, Monroe warned, "Someone is watching us closely. This isn't a lone actor, it could be an entire network." Surveillance cameras were installed throughout the canyon to monitor any activity, and county sheriff patrols were doubled. Experts split into 2 camps. One believed Darius was killed the very night he vanished, his body disposed of in a deep ravine no one had yet found. Others theorized he was taken elsewhere and murdered later, or even kept alive for some time. The most extreme suggested Darius might have survived, forced into something unspeakable before those involved realized they couldn't keep the secret forever. These opposing theories fueled confusion, and the public grew increasingly divided. Some demanded the full truth at any cost, while others pleaded for the case to close, fearing it would tear open old wounds in the community. On the morning of the 5th day, as the search team scoured the canyon, a K-9 unit suddenly alerted to a suspicious patch of ground about 300 meters from where the backpack was discovered.
Excavation revealed not a body, but a locked metal box containing 6 boxes of vintage military ammunition, their serial numbers matching the lot that went missing from Little Creek's supply room the night Darius disappeared. This confirmed the arms smuggling theory, but also proved someone had returned to the canyon to bury incriminating evidence. It was a bombshell. Darius had likely witnessed an illegal deal that night, making him a liability that had to be silenced. Even more terrifying was the realization that whoever hid this evidence had kept it secret for nearly 2 decades, suggesting a network powerful enough to manipulate the entire system. With fragile truths, conflicting clues, and intense media pressure, morale in the investigation began to crack. Even Monroe, normally unshakable, confessed to a colleague, "I don't know who to trust anymore." Every lead collapses into another dead end.
Meanwhile, Silverpine's residents grew bitterly divided. Half saw the case as proof of a system that abandons black lives. The other half feared dredging up the past would only bring danger to their town. Just as hope hit its lowest point, the newly installed cameras around the canyon recorded a chilling sight at 3 a.m. A hooded figure in a black jacket approached the backpack discovery site, moving as if searching for something, then slipping silently back into the forest. If that wasn't the perpetrator, then who's so desperate to keep the truth buried when the image of the mysterious figure captured by the cameras began circulating? Silverpine's atmosphere ignited like never before. Public outrage exploded. Was this the culprit, or someone connected returning to erase evidence? Or was it someone who knew the truth but was too afraid to come forward? In daylight, volunteer groups took turns standing guard at the canyon, ready to help investigators at a moment's notice.
Across social media, the hashtag Justice for Darius spread like wildfire, shared millions of times not just in Colorado but across the entire country. Black Americans everywhere took Darius' story as a grim reminder how many missing black people were never truly searched for. One post by an African-American veteran went viral. If Darius had been white, would he have been forgotten for 18 years meanwhile, in a county hospital room? Valerie Darius, mother, awoke in the middle of the night to see her son's image on TV. Hundreds of people holding candles at the canyon. she broke into sobs, feeling for the first time in nearly 2 decades that she wasn't alone in the fight to find her son, though his body had not been found. She placed a trembling hand on an old photograph of Darius and whispered, "Darius, you will never be forgotten again." Monroe sat in his vehicle, staring at the canyon cloaked in silence.
On his laptop, the footage played over and over the hooded figure bending low, searching carefully, then slipping away. The body size, movements, and sure-footed steps suggested someone familiar with the terrain experienced it moving undetected. Despite coordinating with nearby checkpoints, no one had been apprehended leaving the area, proving the person might still be hiding nearby. Search efforts intensified, but Monroe knew if the person responsible had kept this secret for 18 years, they wouldn't go down easily. At a tense press conference, when asked, "Do you believe you'll find Darius?" Monroe answered firmly, "I believe the truth will eventually come out, but the truth might not be what we hope for." His words rang like a warning. The truth could be darker than imagined, or it might never be fully uncovered. The San Juan Canyon, quiet for millions of years, had become a symbol of buried secrets, a place where people were forced to confront their own conscience. The sight of hundreds of candles lining the canyon trail on the final night of the official search created a moment that was both heartbreaking and deeply human. As the documentary closed, the narrator's somber voice echoed 18 years of waiting, clues found, new questions raised. Yet the answers remain elusive. If Darius is still alive, where has he been if he's dead? Who must be held accountable? And if an entire community missed the chance to save him? Are we repeating the same mistake with those who are missing today? The screen slowly faded in a final question. What do you think really happened the night Darius disappeared? Leave a comment. Your voice could be the spark that leads to the truth. And an emotional call to action appeared. Comment "Me too" if you believe everyone, no matter who they are, deserves to be searched for until the end.